I'm very passionate about everything that's going on here, basically all the organic farming, and it fits really well with my background. I've done a lot of work to talk about cleaning up, or, restoration projects, but I'd much rather teach holistic lifestyles and promote holistic lifestyles for people and be a part of that. Learning to work with water and learning about water is pretty important, and you can set yourself up a great grow room, and you can absolutely have water issues or input issues with your water. So I'm here to talk about water, but my background, just to give you a bit about my background, is I'm a geologist by trade, and so I've worked with environmental geology for 15 years now, and so I've done a lot of groundwater restoration projects and worked with cleanups in rivers and lakes and straight groundwater. So my history on water is pretty extensive, and it's something that I'm very, very passionate about, is learning about water and how to clean water. And so how do we clean water? When we have an accident, when gasoline gets spilled into water, what do? How do they clean that water? Well, what we do is we drill trenches in the ground, and we run PVC lines, and we drop vertical lines into the groundwater table with screen slots, hook it to an air compressor, and bubble that water, and we just bubble the groundwater location. We've done this to several gas stations. It's very common for them to have such a treatment system. They'll have a trailer that has the carbon filter inside of it, and so what they're doing is bubbling off all of the contaminants, trying to harness them to a location of a filter point, clean it, and restore the water, remediate the water. And so, we're all aware that water varies around the world, right? Water varies between our neighborhoods, let alone the entire world. So water is extremely variable to begin with. Having clean source, proper source water, good water, is essential to us. And in Michigan here, I think we take it a bit for granted because we are the Great Lakes state, and so water is very, very plentiful here. We're known for having some of the best water, right? But is that absolutely true? Do we have the best water in the world? No, that is not true, but that's because we've had a lot of activities here. Michigan is a huge agriculture state. We've had industrial practices set up here since the beginning of industry. We were the automobile capital, and this is where the automobiles came to be. So on all of our coastlines, we set up tremendous factories and industry type situations, and pump chemicals into our water for years. And so now we're trying to clean it up, and trying to fix these negligent practices of our grandfathers and the places they worked and stuff. So I think it's important that we remind ourselves of that, and exactly what all goes into water, and what it goes in to clean up these water projects, because it does get its own stigma. Some people don't believe that water can be remediated in the first place, and that's ridiculous. You can absolutely remediate water. You can remediate nature, right? Nature remediates itself, so given the proper amount of time, it will remediate itself. So water also is very unique in itself, in the sense that it's one of the most unique substances on this planet, in the sense it's the only substance that's available in all three phases. We can find it in solid, liquid, vapor form. We know that it's essential to all life around us, our bodies, and it's essential to all of our bodily functions, and everything is made up of blood. All of our blood is made up of water. So it's very, very important, of course. And then we take these waters and we mix it with our feeds, and we offer it to our plants, of course. So I'll go from there to natural systems. How do natural systems operate? And that's what we're trying to do here with the natural farming community, is mimic natural systems. And so we look at the forested environments and the decaying matter that falls down, the leaf matter, the vegetative matter, the stick matter. We acknowledge this as offerings to our plants, offerings to the planet, and we even try to bring this stuff in. People like Dragonfly Earth Medicine have been promoting the culture beds, very, very big, and and it's a big thing. So we're recognizing these natural systems. A natural system for water, is obviously free from man, free from gasoline, free from these contaminated environments, free from all the crap that we consume, and we find water in its most valuable form when it's free, right? When it's free flowing, falling, rolling through nature in a nice, beautiful mountain cascade, something like that, or locked in a glacier, melting from a glacier. That's when we find water to be at its most beautiful form in a natural system. And so tying all this in the fact that, I recognize how we treat groundwater and what we can do with water, and that, water is very capable of holding on to things that we need, and it's very capable of holding on to things that we don't need. And so our bodies consume all of these things, of course. And so over time, a lot of our cancers that we're building up in our body, we know that they come from foods, yeah, but they also come from waters, and so we build up a bunch of things in our lives. We are a biological cell, and so our biological cells have a lifespan, and we have to feed those biological cells mainly through water. The biological cells really don't care what you eat. They want that water is what they want. They want the freshest, most available water they can get. And so water is extremely important. There's all sorts of projects, being implemented all over, the states and all over the world, of restoring different water systems, trying to clean up water, trying to restore a natural environment. When I was in school in Colorado, we had an initiative of saving the beaver, save the beaver. And the whole initiative there is if we can save the beaver, we're allowing our water and natural systems to operate in a natural way. Because as soon as we destroy the beaver, we channelize the water, we move a whole bunch of things around it, and we start destroying the natural systems immediately. And so we live in these environments. We live in a city environment. We live in urban environments. We live in environments that have been contaminated, and we rely on the fact that maybe our water is clean, or hopefully our cities are properly cleaning the water and giving us what we need. But we all know that is not exactly true too. That, agricultural runoff, there's a lot of issues there. And so you could be in an agriculture environment and have, some runoff issues from some farming practices that are contaminating your water system, as well as a gas station or some sort of industrial environment. And so, we have all sorts of issues with water. If you're in well water, often it's heavy metals or dissolved solids, things like that. Irons, things, that we just can't process in our bodies. So these things do build up over time. And in the city, it's chlorine often, and some of the chemical additives and various things. And we rely on the fact that they are taking water that is absolutely disgusting and nowhere near ingestible and trying to clean it and make it, ingestible for us. And so that process alone is obviously something that's a bit intense. But besides that point, we're just relying on a lot of things, and we're all building up, and we're all learning about healthy communities and healthy environments and healthy lifestyles and healthy living. And water is absolutely becoming a part of it. And we all know that drinking healthy water, people go and, they'll spend $10 on a bottle of water at certain places because they think it's a good place of water. People travel all over the world to go to certain locations just to check out the water, things like that. So we all acknowledge the importance of water. It's not the point, but energized water is something that I like to use as a phrase to just get people to think about water, period. Is your water energized? Maybe you're going to answer yourself right away, nah, I never like the water I drink out of the house. It's disgusting. So it feels far from energized water. In moving forward, our environment has issues. Our water has issues. Our cities are populated. We're relying on all these systems. And so getting home filtration, home treatment systems is becoming more and more of a thing. And so it's something that I advocate as well, is just, getting your water tested every few years. If you buy a house and you live there forever, having it tested every so often. and investing in a water treatment system of its own. Now I have some fancy funnel tools that we use too. We have a VORTEX brewer that we use in our gardening program, and I have some glass funnel and some other glass devices that we use in our gardening program as well. And so people ask about these. And so the purpose of these tools is that we are trying to mimic nature with these tools, and we're trying to do, you know, what nature does with water. We're trying to vortex it. We're trying to run it across obstacles. And so what's the point in that? I'll bring it back to my background in cleaning water. You know, if water has some contaminants in it and you properly aerate your water, some of them contaminants are kicking off into the environment and they are absolutely executing from your water. And so water has the ability now to hold on to molecules, of course. It's the carrier of all this stuff to our body. And so we don't want our water to be cluttered with a bunch of nonsense so that it's not able to, you know, revitalize our cells properly. We want to have good, clean, healthy water. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. And so the purpose of aerating this water this way, say if you have, you know, water molecule is a structure of hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is positively charged, the oxygen is negatively charged. So water is a dipole. Each of those dipoles allows its ability to hold on to different nutrients. The oxygen's looking for other positive molecules, the hydrogen's looking for other negative molecules. Now you get a salt molecule coming along, NaCl, another positive and negative charge. That water immediately will attach onto that sodium chloride and make it availability to it. Our bodies don't need so much sodium chloride. We talk about eliminating table salts and things like that. Like, that's not necessarily the problem. A lot more problem is with water. You know, we don't need sodium chloride in our water. So one way that just vortexing water and properly energizing and building of water is, when you do that, it can actually just kick off molecules such as sodium chloride or other gases or other rough things that you may have in your water. So just by filtering your water and keeping your water moving, you're absolutely building a dynamic water. There's some other agricultural programs that use much bigger machines with vortexes inside of them and things that cost a lot of money, and we've heard of plenty of traditional farmers, I guess I've talked to farmers that hand stir for, you know, an hour with their arms or whatever, and they'll say that they sit around and do these things. So people have been using these practices and understanding these practices. When we restore a river, you know, we'll install like one of those water pumps to just shoot water up in the air. You see an active, if someone has a pond on their water, the pond that looks healthiest is the one that has some sort of a spout that's actually properly moving this water. It keeps the anaerobic environment from building in the first place. So you want to keep your environment proper. And so by implementing proper brewing systems, you know, we're able to eliminate some of these contaminants. We're able to eliminate the anaerobics that we're looking for in the first place. Using a proper VORTEX brewing system or VORTEX equipment, you know, I'll tell you straight out, we eliminate slime. You know, you stick air stones in your thing and you think that, you know, you're aerating your water. You're not. An air stone works through a machine and it pushes water down and it splits the water molecules into smaller water molecules, and so they can come up and grab a little burp of oxygen and maybe pull it down into it. By doing a proper vortex action, it is living, breathing water that is actually pulling air, able to release its contaminants and do things. So there's many ways. People have like water tables, a waterfall type system, a vortex type system, but you know, I truly believe that the best you can move your water, vortex your water, you're keeping a dynamic water. And on top of that, what are we trying to do? We're trying to mix inputs to feed to our plants. And so there really is no better way to mix your feeds than through a system like that. And then when it comes to brewing teas, you know, we're taking all these organics and, you know, these various goodies that we can find and trying to implement them into the water. We want them to become one with the water and the oxygen. And so by doing that, you know, it's another process of mimicking nature. So just keeping in mind as we're building water and brewing teas and trying to feed our plants, it's a great opportunity for your water to go stagnant and for problems to build in that water in the first place. You know, you got a great big reservoir of water, it's been sitting there all week, and they think they could drop an air stone in there and move it a little bit and feed it to their plants. You know, there's dead water. If I bring you some water that's dead and I say, hey, you know, I want you to drink this for the next month, how you gonna feel? You know, you're gonna be scared, right? You know, it's like that we feed a lot of gardens do feed their plants dead water, just water that is not good for them, because they don't know how to keep it properly moving or whatever. The other interesting thing about the VORTEX is that the helix is, you know, the structure of life in itself. And so our body being this living cell, you know, that we're trying to feed, somehow we have to have an availability. And so we know that our blood is, you know, approximately 80% water, and when they look at the water in our bodies, it's not the same as the water that we see out in nature. It's a different water, it's at a different form, it's more hydrated and more oxygenated. And so by having a proper brewed water like this, it's much more bioavailable to us. And so there's a lot of health benefits that could come with it. I'm not going to sit here and claim all the health benefits that I hear about, but you do hear a lot about different health benefits of just ingesting proper water, properly energized water, along with your medicines, of course. And the other thing that I wanted to add is that the process of photosynthesis for development of a plant cell is carbon dioxide, water, and light. And so the water in itself is most important to these plants. Like I say, this on the cellular level of us and our plants, the water is what's most important. And so trying to bring a living water molecule that doesn't have a bunch of garbage attached to it is the goal. That's the goal, and that's the goal to healthy lifestyle for all of us and our plants. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot, you know, a whole big talk prepared. I just wanted to come up and let you guys know about these tools, and you're seeing more of these VORTEX tools out there. I'm not the only one that talks about them and makes them. There's some really big fancy stainless steel ones out there that you can spend a lot of money on, and those are great, but we can't all afford them, of course. And so, you know, there's various ways that you can make things and you know, have different reservoirs for your gardening to keep them moving. So, you know, I get a big kick out of seeing what people come up with too, you know. So feel free to share any of your designs that you come up with, and you know, we'll share them with people as well. But does anybody have any questions about this energized water stuff or living waters?
Can you talk more specific about your VORTEX, like how long you...
Yeah, so, you know, we all use different gardening tools for one. And like I say, we're trying to build a dynamic feed for our plants. And so depending on what I'm mixing, you know, we mix different. But like the VORTEX that we do, I use like a grain bag, and we put the goodies that we have in there. And then so the VORTEX funnel falls directly on top of the grain bag, and it just builds a tea inside of the barrel itself. But we, you know, the typical rule that people say is 24 to 48 hours. But if you're using a proper brewer like that, or a real nice brewer, you don't need to go for 48 hours at all. Like, I'm able to mix a nice feed overnight and run it, and, you know, and have it fed the next day. Or, you know, say another thing that we've been working with people is, like, say you got multiple farm plots and you got, you know, a lot of area to cover. You could get yourself a 250-gallon water tote and have it full. Instead of letting it go stagnant, you could actually hook a VORTEX to the top of it and keep your water moving, so that you're not feeding your plants this dead water out there, you know. And you could actually have irrigation points is kind of something that I'm talking to farmers about, is you know, just having irrigation points on your property. Because we you know, in Michigan we get a lot of water, so that's good. You know, we don't have to feed too much outside, but there are definitely times where you want to try to get them food in there, especially for us hemp and cannabis growers. You know, we want to try to get that extra goodies in there when we can.
Water goes stagnant, is there a way, I mean, can you save it?
Yeah, you can.
And how long does that usually take to kind of re-energize it?
So temperature is a big thing with water. So if you think your water's gone bad, just simply cooling it and getting it moving again can bring it back. because water does not like to be above 60 degrees. You know, in a natural environment, that's another thing. Water's about 55 degrees. So once it gets above that temperature, then you know it's not comfortable anymore.
Will you
Really.
see any like pH differences when you're vortexing? Like will it go up or down?
Yeah, typically it brings it up. I believe it because it just really enhances a lot of the biodynamics that you're bringing in there, and so it buffers the system. And then, you know, and that's where we use in apple cider vinegars or brown rice vinegar to bring it down, or some fulvic acids. Usually a mix of apple cider vinegar and some fulvic acids. But I will say on that front that you know, I'm a farmer, and I'm still a geologist, and we also have a store in Nuevo, so you know, we do what we do, and I'm very passionate about everything that's going on here, basically all the organic farming, and you know, it fits really well with my background. I've done a lot of work to talk about cleaning up, or, you know, restoration projects, but I'd much rather teach holistic lifestyles and you know, promote holistic lifestyles for people and be a part of that, because that's the problem in the first place was all the negligence, that people didn't realize what they were, you know, whether they realized it or not, they were negligent. And now we realize what we've done, and that, you know, we're trying to clean up water and soil all over the place, you know, and so the way to clean it up is to keep it moving, you know, and not let it go stagnant. And that's part of the way, you know. There's different things that you got to do for different issues, of course, still, but the first thing to do is to keep it moving again. A stagnant river, we put a point in there to like a water tap or a spout or something like that, to start adding more oxygen to the environment. And that's part of the reason that the water is being killed in the first place, is just because we've just added too much stuff in there that kills the oxygen. And so it just goes anaerobic, and the problems compound on itself. And that's an interesting thing, because we've all fed our plants water that, you know, wasn't so healthy, and you noticed it right away, didn't you? You're like, oh my God, that feeding just destroyed them. So imagine our bodies, you know, sometimes we feel a little grimy, you know, it's because, you know, we don't take care of ourselves so well too sometimes.
So is it actually like adding a positive charge to the water?
Yeah, overall it does. When you vortex it like that, the idea is that it does have an overall positive charge. And so water also has the larger surface area that you can have for a water molecule, the more bioavailable it is, the more it's able to grab onto other molecules, and the better it can be. And so that's another dispute against the air stones, is you don't want to blast that water molecule, you know, to death with an air stone. You want to keep it moving naturally in a natural system.
And the hex is the biggest?
Yep. And then when water is in its full form, it's hexagonal, and so it's able to attach on to more positive molecules that you need, hopefully more nutritive value to you and your plants. And as water begins to fall apart, it loses its shape and its adversity.
I was trying to think, would it like increase the cation exchange thing if you add more positively charged?
Good point. That's another point that I should talk about. So cation exchange is essential to plant growth, of course. And so the process of cation exchange is that you have a water molecule, you have mineral organics, and you have soil organics. And somehow you have to get the mineral organics and the soil organics to the water molecule so that it can get it to the root mass. If your water molecule is full of sodiums and chlorides and different contaminants, it's not able to work in that cation exchange possibly. It's not able to grab onto what it needs to and facilitate it to the root mass in the first place. I think we all remind ourselves as we get more in tune with nature, and that's why we all tend to get a little bit more healthy as we get more involved into this stuff, you know. And another thing that I, you know, remind is, you know, we've seen a lot of people get sick in our lives, and what's the first thing that they do when they get sick is they change their lifestyles and they get more healthy about it, you know. So we need to take these lessons that we failed from and acknowledge them. And there are things that we can do to better our own lives, and practices that we can teach our children and the younger people around us, so that we can have a more sustainable environment moving forward. Whether or not all these issues are real or not, we know that we want the humanity to survive. We know we want clean water. We know we want sustainable gardening practices and clean food. So it's an interesting time. It's very cool to see people, you know, grabbing on to natural farming, and you know, we've in the 90s it was a Miracle Grow world, right? That's what happened. Miracle Grow came in the 90s and turned it all into a Miracle Grow world, and Monsanto and this and that, and so now we're all reverting back to our natural ways and realizing that things are much better off that way, and that we're all much better off that way, and that if we're going to move forward, that somehow we cannot forget about these ways, and that we gotta keep moving. All right, well, I'm done. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about, is learning about water, and how to clean water.